Well, good morning, church. We're going to spend 5 minutes with God together today. To start, I want to share a story. A couple weekends ago, I was hanging out in our church lobby between services, and a guy in our church named Dennis came up and talked to me. So if you're watching, hey, Dennis. All right, so Dennis came up and talked to me, and as he approached me, he said, "There he is, the man who always has a smile on his face." And he started talking about how every time he sees me, I always seem happy. I always seem like I'm on the top of the world. And truthfully, that's pretty accurate, especially if you see me in the lobby on a Sunday morning. I'm a pretty happy guy in general, but especially if you catch me at church on a weekend, because I love being here. I love the energy. I love having people together. I love seeing the faces of the people that come together to worship God. So I'm usually pretty happy when I'm here at church, and generally I'm a happy guy. But I'd be lying if I said I'm always happy or I'm always having a great day. See, just like anybody else, there's these days or there's these weeks that are just better than others and some that are worse than others. And sometimes it's really hard. So a couple weeks ago, I had one of those down weeks. I mean, it was just this perfect storm of stuff that came together to introduce all this stress in my life, and I just felt like there was so much going on and I couldn't make it. There wasn't enough time in the world to get everything done, and started to feel like I was disappointing the people in my life because I was just kind of treading water and struggling to make any ground. So in the midst of this difficult time, I spent some time just focusing on the positive, looking for what's going to kind of bring me out of this funk. And I spent some time thinking about a discussion that I had in our small group a couple weeks ago. And we had this discussion about what fills our lives throughout our daily, day or week. And we talked about this lesson that was taught by a guy named Bob. And Bob teaches us as if it's every person is carrying around a bucket. And Bob's lesson for us and what we discussed in small group was that whatever you fill your bucket with, that kind of is the person you become. And Bob told a story where he actually carried a bucket around for a week straight to remind himself to fill it with the things he needs. And in that time, Bob said he needed to fill it with patience. And he found out that if he just reminded himself to fill his bucket with patience, he could be patient with the people in his life. And so I found myself thinking of this and thinking of this bucket and what I was filling it with. And so I got a bucket here, and I realized in the rough week that I was having, I wasn't filling my bucket with the right things. Sometimes we can fill our buckets with anger and frustration. Sometimes our buckets get filled with fear and anxiety. And I realized that in my week, I was kind of filling my bucket with this idea of disappointment or this concern that I wasn't living up to what I needed to be doing, with my life in that week, that I was missing something because I wasn't able to accomplish it, and you get this bucket, and then once you fill it in, that's all the stuff that comes out. I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm worried, and I'm carrying this weight around. And back to that small group conversation, Bob said, don't fill your bucket with these things. He said, fill your bucket with love so that you can become love to the people around you, or in my life, I needed to fill it with something different because what I was having happen to me in the week wasn't working. And so I came back to this passage of scripture that's one of my favorites. It's a prayer from the book of Romans in chapter 15, and it says, "May the God of hope," which is such a big thing because in that moment I had lost hope. I just was feeling drained. I was feeling empty, and I was feeling like I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And so this reminder, may the God of hope, it says, fill you with joy and with peace. But it goes on, it says there's a purpose to this, and it's not just so that you can have joy and peace, but it says so that you may overflow with hope. May the God of all hope fill you with joy and fill you with peace. So that when people look into your bucket, those are the things they see in your life, so that you know that you have a life filled with the hope of God. And as soon as I remember that, everything kind of melted away. I came out of the stress, I came out of the funk, and I had a much better week the next week. But I can never lose sight of that. And so my prayer for you today is if you're looking for hope somewhere in your life, if you need hope, remember that God is the God of hope, and let him fill you with joy and with peace. God bless you, church.